Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. On Capitol Hill, the chair of the Senate Armed Forces Committee, Carl Levin, has accused top Bush administration officials of sanctioning the use of harsh interrogation techniques used at Guantanamo, Iraq, and Afghanistan. During a hearing on Tuesday, Levin revealed a senior CIA lawyer told Pentagon staff at Guantanamo in 2002 that torture is, quote, basically subject to perception. CIA Attorney Jonathan Friedman said, quote, if the detainee dies, you're doing it wrong. Levin also revealed military psychologists played a role in devising the military's interrogation routines.
On October 2nd, 2002, a week after John Rizzo, the acting CIA General Counsel, visited Gitmo, a second senior CIA lawyer, Jonathan Friedman, who was chief counsel to the CIA's Counterterrorism Center, went to Guantanamo, attended a meeting of Gitmo staff, and discussed a memo proposing the use of aggressive interrogation techniques. That memo had been drafted by a psychologist and psychiatrist from Gitmo who a couple of weeks earlier had attended that training given at Fort Bragg by instructors by the SEER School.
During Tuesday's hearing, the Pentagon's former general counsel, William Haines, was repeatedly questioned about his role in authorizing interrogation techniques that amount to torture, according to many legal and human rights groups. During 2 hours of testimony, Haines responded to dozens of questions by saying he could not recall or remember details about the process of approving the interrogation techniques. Democratic Senator Jack Reed of Rhode Island blasted Haines' role in authorizing torture.
You said the Geneva Convention doesn't apply, and they honestly asked, well, what does apply? And the only thing you sent them was, these techniques apply. No conditions, nothing. So don't go around with this attitude of you're protecting the integrity of the military. You degraded the integrity of the United States military.
The Senate also released documents Tuesday confirming the U.S. military hid the locations of some prisoners from the International Committee of the Red Cross in order to cover up the torture of prisoners. The New York Times reports the Army official who managed the Pentagon's largest contract in Iraq says he was ousted from his job when he refused to approve paying more than $1 billion in questionable charges to the former Halliburton subsidiary, KBR. Charles Smith said he was forced from his job in 2004 after informing KBR officials the Army would impose escalating financial penalties if they failed to improve their chaotic Iraqi operations. Although KBR's performance in Iraq has come under fierce criticism from lawmakers, the Pentagon recently awarded the company part of a 10-year, $150 billion contract in Iraq. Until last year, KBR was known as Kellogg, Brown & Root and was a subsidiary of Halliburton, the Texas oil services giant where Vice President Dick Cheney previously served as chief executive. Congressman Henry Waxman described Charles Smith's account as startling. Waxman said, quote, it confirms the committee's worst fears. KBR has repeatedly gouged the taxpayer, and the Bush administration has looked the other way every time. Meanwhile, the Pentagon's Inspector General is accusing KBR of overcharging the Navy in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. KBR was hired by the U.S. Navy after the hurricane to provide meals to workers and service personnel. According to the Pentagon's audit, the Navy paid approximately $4.1 million for meals and services that should have cost less than $2 million. The Pentagon's audit requests that the Navy seek refunds of at least $8.5 million for inappropriate payments to KBR. Israel and Hamas have agreed to an Egyptian proposed ceasefire that could ease the Israeli blockade of the Gaza Strip. Under the agreement, Israel's pledged not to engage in offensive action in the Gaza Strip, and Hamas has pledged to stop all Palestinian militant groups from attacking Israel from Gaza. The West Bank is not covered by the ceasefire, which goes into effect Thursday morning. Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh pledged his support for the agreement.
The Palestinian demands were clear: lifting the siege and blockade, opening the crossing, and ending the aggression. And we believe that these demands have been met. And the Palestinian people will see the fruits of these negotiations, dialogues, and as well as the fruit of endurance for an entire year of total and choking siege.
Hamas has also agreed to intensify talks over the release of Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit. Hours before the ceasefire was announced, an Israeli airstrike in Gaza killed 6 Palestinians. Meanwhile, the Israeli government's also now calling on Lebanon to open peace talks. In Iraq, at least 63 people died Tuesday in a devastating truck bombing in Baghdad. The dead included 4 children and 5 women. It was the deadliest bombing in Baghdad in 3 months. Meanwhile, The Independent of London reports the Bush administration's accepted that foreign contractors in Iraq will no longer have immunity from Iraqi law under a new security agreement now under negotiation. Iraqi Foreign Minister Hashir Zabari told the paper if there was a further incident like the one in which 17 Iraqis were killed by Blackwater operatives last September, the Iraqis would arrest and punish the contractors held responsible. In other Iraq news, a U.S. military judge has dismissed charges against another Marine connected to the massacre of 24 Iraqi civilians in Haditha. Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Chesani had been accused of failing to investigate the killings. Of the 8 Marines originally charged, only 1 still faces prosecution. 6 Marines have won dismissals of their charges, and 1 has been cleared at court-martial. The Environmental Protection Agency is warning residents of Iowa and other Midwest states to avoid contact with floodwater because it could be contaminated with sewage or other hazardous substances. Raw sewage and livestock manure is now flowing into rivers and streams because wastewater facilities have been inundated by the record floods. Parts of the Mississippi River are continuing to rise, raising new concerns. On Tuesday, a levee near Gulfport, Illinois, burst. Meanwhile, agribusiness analysts say consumers will soon feel the effect of the flooding as the price of corn increases.
Big loss in emergence and growth of our corn, and at least 2 million acres have been affected. The range I've seen is between 2 to 4 million acres. And the last crop report took U.S. Production figures down. They dropped 380 million bushels. That was actually before the most severe effects of the flood.
President Bush is expected to call on Congress today to lift a nearly 3-decade ban on offshore oil drilling to combat the rising price of gas. Bush's speech comes just days after Senator John McCain called for the ban to be lifted. On Monday, Senator Barack Obama said there's no evidence that lifting the ban on oil drilling would provide relief to consumers. Bush also wants Congress to open Alaska's Arctic National Wildlife Refuge to oil drilling, a move both McCain and Obama oppose. In other campaign news, the Texas Republican Party is coming under criticism for allowing the sale of racist pins at last week's convention. One vendor was selling a pin that read, quote, "If Obama is president, will we still call it the White House?" The Denver police are stocking up on pepper spray guns ahead of the Democratic National Convention. The paper has ordered 88 projectile launchers that fire plastic balls filled with cayenne pepper and other substances. Denver's purchasing the weapon from SWAT, Security with Advanced Technology, that is. The news comes just weeks after SWAT announced plans to merge with the company Pepperball Technologies. Meanwhile, some residents of Denver are questioning why a half-dozen military helicopters flew over parts of the city Monday as part of a secret security drill. The Denver Post reported the military aircraft buzzed above the Pepsi Center, the site of the Democratic Convention. A military spokesperson denied the drill was connected to the convention. Lieutenant Nathan Potter said, quote, "It's routine preparation for the global war on terrorism." In Texas, the execution of Charles Hood has been postponed for at least 30 days, following a series of last-minute appeals. Hood's lawyers have accused the judge in his case of having an affair with the prosecutor. Hood was scheduled to have been executed yesterday. In news from Latin America, former Cuban leader Fidel Castro was shown on Cuban television Tuesday with his brother, President Raul Castro, and Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez. The video showed the first public images of Castro since January. And a correction. In our headline summary Friday, we showed an incorrect picture in a story on a Supreme Court ruling about American citizens being held in Iraq. When referencing one of the detainees, Shawki Ahmad Omar, we mistakenly showed a picture for our TV audience of Ahmed Shawki, an Arab-American activist in California.